The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Irene Varley, Director of Education for the Dibble Institute, and accompanying me today is Kathy Gidray, our program organizer. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Well, welcome to all of you who represent a broad base of educational, health, and community organizations working with young people. Joanne Eason and Briana Levin will be sharing their experiences in providing relationship skill building education within a YouthBuild community program with the support of a federal grant obtained in partnership with the Dibble Institute. Before we actually begin our webinar today, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. If you're unable to access audio at any time through your computer, you can use your phone. You might want to note this phone number. It's also on your link that led you to the broadcast. And all of you are muted. There are different ways to participate. You can type your question in the question box in the control panel. You just take a second to look at where the question box is. We are not going to have any poll questions today, so we're asked for you to raise your hand. So if you have any questions during the broadcast or any comments you'd like to make to the speakers, please use that question box. This webinar will be archived on www.dibbleinstitute.org/webinars in at least 3 business days. We really look forward to your questions and comments this afternoon because they certainly do make and help for an interesting broadcast. Well, some of you may be familiar with the Dibble Institute, but for those of you joining us for the first time, I'd like to just give you a little background in who we are. The Dibble Institute is a secular, national, nonprofit organization dedicating to equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and for their future. Charlie Dibble, and this is his picture with his wife, Helen, was an aeronautical engineer who in his retirement years dedicated his time to working with young people. In doing so, he became aware of the emotional and physical challenges to their long-term well-being. This became most evident when in the early 90s at his grandniece's wedding he heard her say, "Oh, Uncle Charlie, this is just my first wedding." Well, it was a time the divorce rate was reaching its peak, and this response very much concerned Charlie. He had heard many painful stories from the youth he worked with following their own parents' relationship issues. Charlie was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. In 1996, with cooperation of fellow business, colleagues, educators, and friends, he founded the Dibble Fund, now known as the Dibble Institute. Now, Charlie's vision was to have accurate, unbiased, and timely research-based information available for you. And we pride ourselves in remaining true to Charlie's vision. And we trust the research on positive outcomes for children who grow up in households where healthy, committed relationships are modeled. This is not to say we are anti-divorce, as we realize there are marriages that, quite frankly, are best to end. As far as sexual orientation goes, we believe all young people benefit from being in a healthy relationship and can learn the skills necessary to form them. Everyone benefits when healthy choices are made. Our view on cohabitation is to acknowledge the large percentage of couples who do and will cohabitate and know relationship education teaches them that there are smarter ways to do so, to be intentional about their choices, and recognize the stage and health of their relationships. So with that being said, I'm so happy to introduce Joanne Eason to you today. She first began working in the healthy relationship and marriage field in 2000 with the Oklahoma Marriage Initiative. One of her areas of expertise is youth and relationship education. She works with the Oklahoma Family and Consumer Science Career Technology Department to provide teachers with healthy relationship curricula and training. And this is remarkable. To date, over 300 teachers have been trained, and altogether they have reached over 150,000 teens with healthy relationship skills. Additionally, Ms. Eason is involved through a federal Healthy Marriage grant in partnership through the Dibble Institute. Since 2006, she has worked with educators, helping them to deliver healthy relationship education to teens in a variety of settings, from traditional high schools to programs for at-risk young adults in community settings. Right now, she is currently overseeing the grant activities of the Building Brighter Futures grant with the Century Center for Economic Opportunity, YouthBuild in Los Angeles, which brings me to welcoming Briana Levin. She is the Health Program Coordinator at the Century Center for Economic Opportunity of YouthBuild, where she designs and implements a school-wide health program, teaches health classes, manages student interns to provide nutritious daily meals at school, and groceries for students to take home, and coordinates the instruction of healthy relationships and financial literacy for curricula. These two have fabulous experiences to share with us today. So welcome, both Joanne and Briana.
Thank you very much.
Brianna, if you just give me a second, I just want to do a sound check with everyone. If anyone is having any problems hearing, if you will please just make a note in the question box. I'm just kind of checking on the volume and whatnot here. Thank you, Brianna. All righty, we can go on when you're ready.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Irene. Today, this is Joanne, and we're going to be talking about the Building Brighter Futures project, which is a grant funded under the Administration for Children and Families, which is the Healthy Marriage Initiative. The Dibble Institute, Public Strategies, and the Century Center for Economic Opportunity YouthBuild are partners in this project, and this is the third year in a 3-year grant. As we discuss the many elements of this program, you may be thinking, wow, I could never do all that. And maybe you probably wouldn't want to even try to start from the beginning and do all the things that are done under this work. But the thing is to think about what you can do and what will fit within your program and within your community. Building Brighter Futures is tailored to fit the needs of the Century Center for Economic Opportunity. And relationship education at Century Center started small and grew to what it is today. So let's look at what they do here. Briana?
Thank you, Joanne. Just to start off, if anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat box, and I'd be happy to answer those at certain intervals throughout the presentation. I want to start off by describing a little bit about the Century Center for Economic Opportunity YouthBuild. We're a nonprofit leadership development program, so leadership is truly at the core of what we do here. We work with 16 to 24-year-olds who don't have a high school diploma, and those two requirements are the only requirements for the young people we work with, the age and needing the high school diploma. Another thing of note is that we're located in Lenox, which is an unincorporated area of LA. So resources oftentimes stop at the borders. For example, Lenox is a food desert, so food resources are really limited in Lenox, and most of the food resources that are available to our students are found in liquor stores and fast food restaurants rather than more healthful grocery stores that many of us might shop at. So to describe the CCEO YouthBuild, we use this 6-bubble model. Community leadership is at the center of this model. So examples of leadership at our organization are community action projects that our students organize and put on every trimester. So examples of those projects are a health fair that they've put on for the community. So they contacted vendors and had different buses and vendors and booths and offered health resources for community members at the end of a trimester last year. Another example of a project that our students have put together through our leadership component, they taught a lesson at a local elementary school about the history of the area. Other components of our leadership program are leadership competencies that students can improve on throughout the year, and then we also have student interns, so those are opportunities for leadership. The career development component of our program consists of career tracks where students learn labor market research. They do that labor market research, go on industry tours, and then we invite professional speakers to share their knowledge with our students. The different career tracks that we offer are food, computers, construction, welding, business, and automotive. We also offer a blueprint for workplace success curriculum where students learn different life skills that will help them be successful in their careers. Our construction training program is a vocational education program where members can earn certifications in the construction field, also in CPR and first aid. Our classroom component is where students can earn their high school diploma. We don't offer GEDs, we only offer high school diplomas. It's an accelerated program where students who come in with no credits can earn their diploma in 2 years if they complete all of their projects. Our education model here is slightly alternative. It's project-based and social justice curricula. So students don't get credit by completing tests and doing daily assignments the way you might imagine at a normal high school or the public high school system. Instead, students complete projects, and a lot of these projects are, or all of the projects are social justice projects in nature. Through our mentorship program, our members have had mentors of their own and been mentors to younger children. And then through the life skills and advocacy component, that's really where Dibble fits in. So we offer Dibble classes on Fridays, and then the other component of our life skills and advocacy program is that we have advocates. These are staff members who help students find resources in the community for any additional barriers they might be facing on their own. So right now I'm working with a student to find her a program or a course that she can take for her alcohol dependency issues. Other things might be accompanying students to court to help them deal with legal issues.
Okay, now let's look at a video that talks about the relationship education and how that fits in. And Briana will be explaining.
20 seconds.
Move that forward.
All right, so in this,
Briana?
yes?
Okay. I wasn't sure if I could hear you. You're going to see this video, but right now there is no sound that we can hear on the video, just for your audience, in case you're thinking, what happened to my sound?
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm just going to remove my headset and speak into my mic so that I won't be hearing the video as I speak over it for all of you.
Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm. So right here I'm describing the continuity between Dibble classes. The model that we used last year is that at the beginning of each class, students did a free write activity where they answered a question that we posed that was connected to the Dibble lesson of that day. Then there was an experiential activity, whether it was creating a mural or a banner or a project that you'll see later in this video, or getting up, walking around the classroom, doing some sort of physical activity. And then at the end of each lesson, there would be a discussion. So the clip that you saw a couple seconds ago with 2 students speaking, what they were doing is they were sharing some spoken word pieces that they wrote in their Dibble classes. One of them was about the difficulty of love and relationships and sort of the trials and tribulations that the young man named Brent had experienced. And then Cameron was sharing a spoken word piece that was really a letter to his son about some of the lessons that he learned the hard way and what he hoped his son could maybe learn from him rather than having to learn the hard way. The tree that you just saw on the wall was in partnership or a part of our domestic violence lesson, and what that was is an I can tree. So each student was given a piece of paper in which they created a leaf that was their contribution for what they could do to either end violence in their home or in their community. And then we created a visual representation for the community room where it's something that students saw throughout the year and was on a wall. And the community room is where students meet every day in the morning, and we meet as an entire community there. So that was a visual representation of something we talked about in a Dibble class, but something that contributes to program culture as a whole. You just saw Greg on the screen. He was one of our former students. He was just sharing a little bit about how he benefited personally from Dibble classes and the opportunities that they provide. And this is Michelle. She's a really amazing student. She was previously in an abusive relationship, and she is an incredible contributor and definitely a leader in class discussions. She's incredibly brave and willing to share her personal experiences and really takes a leadership role in classes, making other students feel more comfortable talking about their experiences. So having students like her in a classroom definitely go a long way in taking discussions to a deeper level and allowing students to talk about some of the difficult situations that they've survived through.
Yes, those are amazing videos, and if you want to see those, you can go on YouTube channel and watch those and actually hear those words on the YouTube channel on the Dibble Institute, because those are very moving stories that those students have to say. Moving on, let's talk about some of the key points from the relationship education.
That sounds great. All right, our first key point is that many young adults in low-income communities lack positive role models and don't observe adults who model healthy relationships. So as a result, it's really important to teach relationship skills in the classroom. My first month or two working at YouthBuild several years ago, I was helping co-facilitate a leadership workshop. And the question that we posed to the 25 students in the room was, how many of you have had a role model in your life? Being somewhat new to the organization, I expected maybe half the hands to go up. Not a single young person in the room raised their hands. And that's when I began to really understand on a much deeper level that some of the things that we may have learned from role models in our lives, our students haven't had the opportunity to do that, which makes it incredibly important to teach these things in the classroom. So a frequent lack of family stability and support leaves our students facing additional barriers at home. And I'm sure that a lot of you are working with young people who are facing some of these barriers. And when I talk about these barriers, I mean things like domestic violence, sexual abuse, drug use, gang affiliation, incarceration. These are barriers that oftentimes their family members, whether it's a mother, a father, an uncle, a cousin, a brother, a sister, barriers that they're facing. And as a result, when our students or the young people we're working with don't have positive role models to show them other paths, these are often paths that our students follow as well. Throughout the rest of the presentation, I might switch back and forth between students and members. We call our students members because they're members of this leadership development program, and the education component is one aspect of our program. So when I'm talking about members, I'm talking about our students here at CCEO YouthBuild. So it's really important to start breaking these cycles of violence and cycles of incarceration and gang affiliation and drug use by teaching healthy relationship skills in the classroom.
All right.
All right. Our second key point is that it's incredibly important to create an accepting environment in the classroom when teaching these relationship skills education classes. It's important for students to feel comfortable engaging in honest discussion because if they don't feel comfortable sharing their experiences, you won't get to that deeper level where they're really engaging with the material. So in order to have a really successful class, it's important to create a safe space. So I spend the first maybe 10, 15 minutes of the first class that I teach with each group of students talking about what a safe space looks like. How do you create that in the classroom? And really making sure they understand that what's said in the classroom is confidential and that it's a non-judgmental space. Another way to make students feel comfortable is by doing small group activities or having students speak to each other, so having them speak in pairs and then having them share out to the class rather than initially just posing questions to the class as a whole when talking about sensitive issues. For topics that are a bit easier to talk about, I might require participation, but for topics that are a bit tougher to maybe reflect on and share about, I encourage students to participate. So if you show the students that kind of respect and explain why you're not requiring participation but encouraging it, they're usually willing to all participate, except for maybe one or two students who have experienced something traumatic and aren't able at that point to share.
And have you had students disclose things that have required reporting or things like that?
Within the Dibble classes as a whole, we make sure to talk about, we make sure that all of our members here know that staff are mandated reporters. So that's something that students know from the very start, that if they tell us that a minor is experiencing abuse, that legally we're required to support that. So they know where those boundaries are, and if they want something to be reported, they would probably tell a staff member one-on-one rather than in the Dibble class. But students really do feel comfortable talking about things that they've experienced in the past, or maybe sharing some of their experiences in ways that don't need to be reported. So they understand where that line is, but we definitely get pretty deep in these classes, and students do feel comfortable sharing some of their some of the things that they've overcome or are currently dealing with in their lives.
Very well.
And then my last point before we move on, and something that I think is really important, is instructor participation. So I make it really clear to my students that I'm not a perfect human being and I'm not a master of relationship skills, and that I too have room for growth. I can be a better communicator. I can be a better listener. I can be more accepting. And so I let them know that I too am working on these things. And so when we do lessons, when we do exercises, I'll share out something that I'm working on, or a piece of baggage from my family's past that I want to do without in the future. So they understand that I'm not othered or different from them, and that I too am a human being working on improving myself. And that's something that helps build trust in the classroom. All right, and then my final key point is that the Dibble curricula allows students to self-assess the healthiness of their own relationships, learn skills to strengthen them, and set goals for the future. So self-assessment rather than outside judgment is really key. So the Dibble curricula at no point tells students your relationship is unhealthy with a pointed finger. Instead, it teaches students the skills to assess whether their own relationships are healthy or not. And I'm sure that we all can remember when we were teenagers and imagine a time when a parent or a teacher or someone told us we should have done something differently, or we shouldn't date so-and-so. And as a young person, I would assume that we didn't all respond all that favorably to that kind of judgment. And so with our young people that we all work with, it's the same thing. We're giving them the tools to figure out that maybe their own relationship isn't all that healthy is much more effective and much more respectful than telling them outright. So that's something that I really appreciate about the Dibble curriculum, is that it gives the students the skills on their own to determine whether or not their relationship is one that's healthy for them at this point in their life. In addition, the Dibble curricula teach students concrete skills. So these might be skills that they didn't learn from a parent, or they didn't learn from an aunt or uncle, or from some other role model in their life. So it's important that they learn these in the classroom. So these are skills like setting boundaries in romantic relationships or relationships with friends, how to pace relationships, so how to make a decision when to become physically intimate with a partner, or when to move in with a partner, or when they're ready to have a child, rather than sliding into those situations maybe before they're necessarily choosing to, or before they're ready. It also teaches them like how to communicate effectively. So things as simple as how to complain effectively. The Dibble curricula, Love Notes, teaches students that, and that might seem like something you should know intuitively, but those are skills that we've learned throughout our lives, and skills that are important to teach our students. So something like when you're complaining, not saying, you always do this, and saying, when you do this, it makes me feel this way. That's a really important skill to teach the young people that we work with, and it's something that really helps them improve their relationships. And then finally, something as simple as how to manage conflict doesn't just affect romantic relationships, but that also affects relationships with your mother or father, or with your own children, or family and friends, even your coworkers and your boss. So a lot of these skills relate to many aspects of a student's life. Even talking to a teacher, a community college or a high school teacher about a grade they got, or a barrier they're facing, conflict management is definitely helpful in that aspect of their life. And then once they've learned those skills, students learn how to set goals for their future based on their values, their expectations, their boundaries, their decisions about pacing. So they have a game plan for the future in terms of moving forward.
Very good. I think it's time to ask the audience if they have any questions.
Sounds good to me.
How about that, Kathy? Can we ask them if they have any questions?
Yes, that'd be great. If you have any questions or comments, if you would type them in the question box, and then I'll relay them to Briana and Joanne.
That sounds good. So should we move on with our video and wait for questions after the video? Or?
Here, I've got one question right here that may be pertinent for this time. Sure. Someone wants to know, what is the success rate for the program?
The success rate for which part of the program do you have? Because there's many parts of the program. We'll be giving some numbers later on that we'll be talking about that. Okay. And you might talk about the graduation later on?
Yeah, I mean, if they're interested in like the graduation rate of our students, we could definitely talk about that. I'm not sure if they're interested in the success of the Dibble classes in particular. Joanne's going to share some statistics about that later on.
Right.
So
okay. Well, we'll hold that later on.
Okay. Well, we'll hold that question. Typically, if someone wants to know, typically how long does the curriculas run for the students? And I think you have a piece of that later on.
Okay. We definitely do have that coming up. Good.
Okay.
Good. We have that included.
All righty.
That sounds good. So we'll definitely cover that in a few slides.
Great.
All right.
So then, shall we?
I think we can move on, and I've got a couple more questions, but I think we can hold those off till you get to the next stopping point.
That sounds good.
So next, we're going to be talking about barriers to participation, and part of the grant, we want to talk about how we have barriers to participating in the program. And we do things to help students or members to overcome barriers to participating. And we're able to help them in certain ways, like we might provide them with a bus pass. Or in this video, you're going to see how CCEO has done some things to help them. Some of the students come to school hungry, and they can't really even learn if you're hungry, so they created a garden. And Briana, let's talk about the garden and what you all have done with that.
Sure. So we have a community garden in the front of our site. Students helped paint these murals last year, and we grow a lot of food in our community garden. It's something that student interns help do, and then I've created a program where we have interns in our nutrition lab who will go out to the garden, pick some lettuce, pick some peppers, come inside, make a salad, put it out for their peers at lunch. So in a way, it's a student-led program. This right here is an image of our nutrition lab that we were able to build through the grant. It's a really wonderful addition to our program. When I first started working here, our kitchen was a tiny little room with a tiny table and no oven, and now we have the capacity to prepare healthy food for our students, both on a daily basis, and we also use the nutrition lab in our health class that I teach Monday through Thursday. So it's a learning lab where students can learn to prepare healthy food, both for themselves and their families, and it's a place where we can utilize the resources from our community garden and donated resources from local organizations.
And as you said, there's the second service program. They can take even food home so that on the weekends they don't have to go hungry?
Definitely. We have a partnership with Food Finders, which has connected us with Trader Joe's. So each week we pick up a really wonderful donation from Trader Joe's, and we use that food to prepare daily meals. And we use some of that food in our health class for students to learn how to cook healthy food for themselves and their families. And then we also send home groceries a couple times a week for students to make healthy food on their own.
That's great. Now let's talk about how the relationship education is implemented right here at CCEO.
Definitely. So this should answer the question that someone had asked earlier about the timeline of instruction. So the first curriculum that we teach is Healthy Choices, Healthy Relationships. That runs October through December. The Love Notes curriculum is January through April. I believe that has 13 lessons. And then Money Habitudes we teach in May, and it stretches into June. And then I put a picture of our students graduating because that's in June, so that's the end of our timeline. But the Dibble curricula really run throughout the year from October to May or June, and it's something that students take every Friday for a 2-hour block, but then Dibble also is incorporated into other aspects of our program as well.
And throughout the year they receive a total number of hours of relationship education that is about,
I would say 70 to 80 hours a year.
that's a whole lot.
It is a lot, and it definitely goes a long way. I think it's beneficial in many aspects of their life.
But a lot of people don't dare reach that many hours of relationship education. In the beginning, you started out with only one curriculum. You started out just doing Love Notes, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. So, I mean, starting small definitely has a big impact. I recently taught an evening class to 25 to 55-year-olds, and I only used the Love Notes curriculum. It was an 8-week class, 3 hours a week. So in those 24 hours, we covered Love Notes, and the students said it was incredibly helpful. Some of them who are in their 50s said they wish they had these lessons 30 years ago. So they all talked about how they were going to be better partners and how much they'd learned from it. So teaching Love Notes alone is definitely a huge benefit. You don't need to use every single resource available when you start.
Briana,
Right.
Briana, this is Kathy and Joanne. If I can interrupt just for a minute, and Irene, you might want to answer this because it is pertinent to the Love Notes that they're talking about. The question is Love Notes an evidence-based program? And also, are there empirical studies that support the effectiveness of that particular program? Do you have that information, Irene?
Well, in fact, the Love Notes program, along with its I guess, mother program, if in a way you could call it, Relationship Smarts Plus, is an evidence-based program that is on the national NREPP list, which is a list out of the SAMHSA group of evidence-based or promising programs. And we do have on our website the information from the Auburn study. The Relationship Smarts was the beginning curriculum, and then Love Notes is an offshoot of that and is also recognized as an evidence-based program under that that evaluation.
Great.
I can do more of that towards the end. Any questions? I'd be glad to, discuss that privately or personally with anyone with those kind of questions after the broadcast.
Great. And if I can just insert any of these programs that YouthBuild is using, we do have sample lessons on our website at dibbleinstitute.org, so you can actually see one of the lessons from each of these different programs that Briana and Joanne are talking about. Okay,
All right,
thank
shall
you.
we move on?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. Next, this is a slide about some of the resources, Briana.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the primary colors tool on the left side of your screen. That's from Lesson 2 in Love Notes curriculum. And it's a really awesome activity that makes students feel really comfortable talking about themselves and their personality because what it does is it allows students to answer a series of, it's not a series of questions even. If you can actually look at this, and if you look across at the first row, basically the way students fill it out is they read those sets of characteristics, they write which ones they identify with the most, and that's a way for them to determine their own primary color. And that makes students feel really comfortable talking about their own strengths and maybe some of their weaknesses. And it's a way to get students to engage with the curriculum and with each other, recognizing their own strengths and some of their differences and how it's completely okay to be different or to have slightly different values or different personality traits than others. So it's a really easy in, and it's an activity that students really enjoy. And it's something that I continue to reference throughout the rest of the LevNotes curriculum that makes students feel really comfortable in recognizing difference.
All right. Well, let's talk about some strategies for success.
Definitely. So first of all, incorporating healthy relationships education into your program culture and activities. So like the domestic violence I Can tree that we showed you in the first video, that's a visual cue that provides a daily reminder of the importance of promoting healthy relationships and treating others with respect. The second strategy for success is having an organizational commitment to support healthy relationships. So I certainly can't take all the credit for implementing the Dibble curricula here at CCEO YouthBuild. As an organization, everyone has a commitment to supporting healthy relationships. Everyone, staff and students, have bought in to the importance of relationship education here at YouthBuild. And then finally, providing access to resources to help students overcome barriers. So things like providing nutritious food through a health program, helping construction students open bank accounts so that they can save some of the money from their construction stipends, and then offering industry certifications through the health class. These things help our students be successful, not just in their relationships, but in other aspects of their life that ultimately affect their relationships as well. So having food security and financial security and job security, those are things that help you have healthier, happier relationships and don't add added stress to your life.
All right. And talk about how it's implemented.
Definitely. So in terms of implementation, Monday through Thursday here at CCEO YouthBuild, members have 6 classes. So it looks somewhat like a traditional school schedule would look. Students have periods 1 and 2, break 3 and 4, lunch. That's how it looks. On Fridays, we have an alternative schedule. We call it Leadership Fridays. So that's where we put the 2-hour Dibble class. So that's the block that we found. That's where it fits best into our program. That's definitely not where it would fit best for everyone at any site, but that's how we've incorporated it here at YouthBuild. I want to make clear, though, that Dibble extends far beyond Fridays. It's incorporated into our program culture and into all aspects of our program. So earlier when we showed the second video about the garden and about health, I said that students picked lettuce from the garden and prepared that food for their peers. So student interns are doing this. So that's an example of how through Dibble we've created opportunities for leadership for our students. And so Dibble isn't just in the advocacy life skills bubble, now it's in the leadership bubble and other components of the program as well. So other ways that it extends beyond Fridays is we have a financial component, a literacy component, and also a health program.
So the grant was able to help you do all of these things.
Definitely. All right, so in terms of our financial component, right here you can see a picture of 3 of our strong women who completed our construction program, Alejandra, Veronica, and Eileen. So through the construction program, they're able to earn industry certifications, but they also get a stipend for the work that they do. And one of the really important contributions of the Dibble grant is that our students were able to open bank accounts so that they could save some of their money for long-term success rather than spending it all immediately. Another component is the Money Habitudes curriculum that's offered by Dibble. This curriculum allows students to study how their habits and attitudes towards money influence their financial decisions. So like the primary colors tool that I spoke about as part of the LevNotes curriculum, Money Habitudes allows students to determine what their habitude or their habit and attitude about money is. And the different ones are status, spontaneous, planning, carefree, security, and giving. So a student might be able to recognize that their habitude is status and spontaneous. So they tend to value displaying their status through their money, and they spend spontaneously. And they might say, you know what, for the most part I'm pretty happy with my habitude, but I think I could benefit from planning a little bit more, or by making sure that I have more financial security. So it gives them an option to self-assess, as does LevNotes, to determine what their areas are for improvement, rather than having an instructor say, you should spend your money this way, or you should do this, or you should do that. It's all about self-assessment and giving them the skills to improve their lives.
So Kathy, are there some more questions coming in, or do you think that we're on track to answer those questions?
I think we're all on track right now. Unless someone has any other questions, I'll give you just a couple seconds to write something in the question box. I think you all are doing a great job, Joanne and Briana, explaining how the program works.
Thank you.
I think we can move on.
All right.
So I want to speak a little bit about literacy. That's something that all of our students are really working on, something that will really benefit them in their future. And so a way that we've tied Dibble into the education component is by supporting our literacy initiatives. So one thing that we've done is by creating a site-wide reading program during our Sustained Silent Reading program. So every day, Monday through Thursday, right after lunch, we have Sustained Silent Reading. And throughout most of the year, students choose a book. It's their time to read, to improve their reading skills. But each year, during the first trimester, we choose a book that relates to the Dibble curricula. And every student in our school, along with their fifth period teachers, reads this book. And so this is a way to build community, because everyone's reading the same book, talking about these relationship issues and tips and tricks, and it's something that really fosters community both in and out of the classroom. So I have conversations with students about what they're reading at break or at lunch or before school, and it also ties into the Dibble classes on Friday. So right here there's a picture of The Art of Loving Well. That's a resource that's provided or offered by Dibble. There's some really good stories in there that our students have really enjoyed. But this is just an example of how you can tie Dibble into different components of your program and support those programs as well.
And the health program, we've talked a little bit about this already, but perhaps the ServSafe would be something that we haven't really covered.
Definitely. Well, there's a slide about ServSafe, so I'll expand on that in a bit. But in terms of just a brief overview of the health program, the nutrition lab that you saw earlier, the daily meals and groceries, health education is a key component of that program, both in the health class, through the meals that we're serving daily, and then in casual conversations with students and weekly presentations. So our nutrition lab is, that's what you saw in the second video. We were able to build that through the grant. I think we've talked a good amount about what we use the nutrition lab for, but it's a key component in terms of the health education that we offer. So our health classes, I teach that fifth period Monday through Thursday. We talk a lot about healthy eating for disease prevention because obesity, diabetes, hypertension, these often disproportionately affect the population of young people or the populations that we're working with. So it's important for them to have access to this information to share with their loved ones, so their parents and their family, friends. And I haven't taught a class yet where I think everyone in the class knew someone who was suffering from one of the diseases or illnesses that we've talked about. So it's definitely really relevant to the population that we're all working with. In terms of hands-on cooking, things as simple as making scrambled eggs or preparing like a bean salad or even a normal salad. Our students really benefit from learning. So I've sat down and had extended conversations with students about how to make a salad, and that's how I figured out that this is something that I could teach in the classroom, because it doesn't just benefit the students that I'm teaching, but they go out and they teach their family, whether it's their parents or their children, and they share this knowledge with the people that they care about. We also cover healthy meal planning on a budget because our students, it's important for them to know how to stretch the money they have, and those are skills that you learn from someone. So if you haven't learned how to stretch a food budget, it's something that is important to learn in the classroom, just like the relationship skills we're talking about. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the ServSafe Food Handler Certification. So this is a component of the health class where students can take an online course and exam and then get a food handler certification that's valid for 3 years in the state of California. It enhances their employability, and then it also helps them gain part-time employment whether they're looking for a job in the food industry or another industry. So it's something that helps them build their resume and makes them more employable. Our goal is to certify 45 students per year, so that's 15 students per trimester. But it's something that our students are really invested in and an aspect of the program that they really appreciate.
So whether or not they actually end up working in a lifetime career in the food industry, it does give them a leg up if they need a job for now or if they need to find a job forever. They actually have something that they can show for it, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of us worked our way through college or had a part-time job, so it's not that all of these students want to work in the food industry their whole lives, but gaining access to employment will help them support themselves and their families as they're continuing their education at this point in their lives.
And this is another part that the grant was able to help fund.
Definitely. We're really appreciative of that.
So now we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that you all were asking about earlier. And we do a pre and a post survey with the students in the relationship education classes to see what they're getting out of it. And 97% of the students said they felt more confident after taking the course that they could have a healthy relationship in the future. And we think that's pretty impressive. 94% said they were able to recognize if their relationship was unhealthy. And 97% believe they're able to make wise decisions in their relationship. These are the kind of numbers that we believe are going to make a difference not just now, but also in the future.
Yeah, and it's certainly true that in the beginning of classes, students oftentimes have never seen a relationship that they think is healthy, and as a result, they don't really think that healthy relationships are possible. So,
yeah, and what, a valid question is, what did these numbers look like in the beginning? 50% in the beginning, in the pre, would say 50% felt confident that they could have a healthy relationship in the future, but in the end, that 97% said. So we saw a significant jump in the percentage that said they really felt like they could have a healthy relationship. So we're very happy to see the impact that we're having on that. Kathy, do we have any questions at that point?
I think we've
I
covered
have
most.
one question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Irene.
If I could ask. Joanne and Briana, do you have any longer-term outcomes that you can share from knowing and hearing from participants, like participants from last year, any success stories that maybe you know particularly where relationship skills help them?
One of my students who is now an alumni and is taking classes at community college was in a physically abusive relationship, and she ended that relationship and is still in college, and so she had the skills to determine that that relationship wasn't healthy for her, and she also had the skills to end it in a way that was safe for her and is continuing to take classes in college. So that in itself is a huge success story, because the reality is that a lot of young people in these communities are in unsafe relationships. So knowing that she had the confidence and the skills to end that relationship say a lot.
Oh, I think that's a great outcome, because we know how repetitive, when lessons aren't learned, when we don't know better, then it is a higher chance of that same thing happening over and over again. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
All right, well, we have a few final thoughts that we'd like to share with you. And I'd just like to share with you that it's important to get buy-in from your entire organization if you're going to do relationship education, and to share that relationship education information with your entire organization, not just from the classes that you're sharing it with. And it's important to commit to doing it more than once. And because just the first time is just your first time, and it's not going to be your best time. And you want to incorporate it where it fits into your program. Start small and learn. And relationship education is like teaching other subjects and build on it over time. You know, like when you're learning math, you maybe started with addition and subtraction, and then you went on and did multiplication and division. And that you need to do reinforcement over time, and it helps to sustain learning. And as you saw, they do many, many, many hours of education. And maybe you wouldn't do that many hours of education, but maybe you can have a tree in a room where you share your thoughts about relationship education. But anything that you can do to reinforce learning is helpful, whatever works for you. And by starting small, it doesn't have to be expensive. And find the right product. You know, they use many products here, but you don't have to use many products. Find the right product for you and become proficient in your lessons. Do training and practice and make it relevant for your population.
Yeah, I would say a good way to make it relevant is to ask for student participation. So allowing them to guide the lessons a little bit, right? You're still teaching the same curriculum, but allowing them to share their stories and their experiences. They're the ones who can really add that depth to the lessons.
Right. And do a pre and a post to check for the understanding and look for ways to improve.
Definitely.
Joanne.
Look for, yeah.
I'm sorry, Joanne, before you continue, I do have someone who's asking a question about the comment that you made about organizational buy-in. Can you explain exactly what you mean by that? And I'm assuming you mean getting everybody in the organization on board with relationship education. But how might someone, or if a couple people want to try to get the organization to buy into that, how are some ways that you might suggest, or how might they do that? Do you have any suggestions there?
Well, the one thing that I would suggest is that you get a commitment that you can do it more than once. You know, get a commitment that we're going to do it X number of times. Get a commitment that the staff will themselves go through it. That I'm going to go do this, and then I want the staff to go through a couple of lessons, you know, like once a month. You know, at a staff meeting, I'm going to share some of this information with the staff. You know, like Briana showed the colors lesson. That would be a great lesson to share with your staff. And we do the colors at Public Strategies, and we share what is your color, and I'm an orange, and everybody knows I'm an orange. So they know how to best relate with me. Yeah. And that's a great thing to share with your staff.
Yeah, I would also say that in terms of getting organizational buy-in, you can talk about how having a population of students or the young people that you work with, once they've learned these relationship skills, that helps with program retention. Some of the reasons that students will drop out or leave the program throughout the course of the year are issues with their family, or something comes up, or they lose their job because they had a conflict with their boss, things like that. And so if you can help retain students by teaching them the skills to keep their relationships safe and healthy with their family members or the people they live with, or coworkers and bosses, these are skills that relate to other aspects of their lives that might start to impinge with their access to your program.
Right. I think if you could share things like, you know, this conflict management skills, for example, you know, what workplace wouldn't benefit from sharing that with the entire staff?
Exactly.
So those kinds of things, you know, I think helps to get organizational buy-in by saying, you know, I don't want to just teach this to the population that we serve. I want us to all benefit from doing this. So by getting organizational buy-in, you're sharing it back with them, and I think that really helps.
That sounds great. Briana, I know that you have a particular story, and I think this goes hand in hand with buy-in. When you do see success, or you do have a story maybe from one of your students, sharing it with the rest of the staff. And I understand that you have a story that I actually have heard a little bit about before, about a gal who actually delayed having sexual relations. Can you tell us a little bit? Do you remember that story? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of my coworkers told me about a conversation that she had with a couple of our students at break the other day, and one of the students was saying that she was going to wait for a while to have a physical relationship with her boyfriend, and the other girl was like, well, I'm not even going to have a relationship for a while. I'm focusing on school. And so that's not what a lot of people in their peer group are necessarily doing, or their friends outside of YouthBuild are doing. So for them to recognize what their values are and to focus on their values, which at this point is education and going to college and things like that, that says a lot. So I was really happy when my coworker told me that she had that conversation with them.
Yeah, that's definitely encouraging and gets everyone on board with the whole curriculum of healthy relationships for sure when you see that kind of response from students.
And if I could add as well that there is growing research on the connection of relationship education to a wider dimension of impact on home, family, jobs, like you're saying, Briana, retention, and the way that relationship skill education has enhanced your multiple dimension programming is a good example of how that happens. And there is more research out there. And anyone can either email me or call me, and we can, if you can find the research, we can lead you towards that research as well through the Dibble Institute because of, I think that's important to show and have a rationale to provide to your organization as well.
All right.
The final thing I'd like to say is just look for ways to incorporate relationship education into the culture of your organization and make it an everyday thing.
Definitely important. Even things as simple as our students often complain, and so talking to them about complaining in an effective way or raising that complaint in a respectful way, whether it's to their teacher or to a friend or to their boyfriend or girlfriend, things like that. I incorporate Dibble lessons and Dibble concepts into my everyday interactions with members here at CCEO YouthBuild.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being part of this webinar.
Well, Joanne and Briana, I really thank you for, first of all, the work that you are accomplishing on the daily back and forth, but also for sharing that information with us today. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and to remind you there is a brief survey at the end of this webinar. It's very short, but it really helps us to know how it may have helped you and also ideas for future webinars to fit your needs. There is our contact information, a reminder of where to find this webinar and other archived webinars, and a reminder as well to invitation to subscribe to our newsletter. In that newsletter, you will find grant information, and we will be able to help you as well to write relationship skills education into your grant. That is another service we provide. And on that newsletter, we provide any grant applications that are due that we find out about. We offer that information on there as well. So there is free shipping, a savings of 10%. Remember to use the code webinar should you purchase within 30 days any of our materials. And to choose the right material for your group, we're happy to work with you on that as well. Kathy, can you think of anything else that I might have missed as a reminder? Like us on Facebook and in LinkedIn as well. Anything else, Kathy?
I think that's it, but just stay tuned. We are tightening up the schedule for February, and we do have these free webinars every second Wednesday, so we look forward to the Dibble Institute's favorite time of the year, Valentine's Day.
This is the love month.
That's right.
Valentine's Day.
So stay tuned to February 12th's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on that. And you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, and keep warm for those of you that are experiencing the cold weather. Take